For decades, Sally's brothers stayed silent while she smiled through interviews, playing the role of the daughter America adored without ever speaking about what really happened behind the scenes of All in the Family. At 74, she finally told the truth, not just about the show, but about Archie Bunker himself. Her revelations left fans speechless, completely reshaping how the show and the man behind Archie were seen. When Sally first walked onto the set of All in the Family, she was just 23, excited, nervous, and entirely unprepared for what lay ahead. With only a few credits to her name, she had no idea she was about to become part of a cultural phenomenon, or that the man at the center of it would challenge everything she thought she knew about acting, television, and herself. The first taping day was electric but tense, with the cast and crew understanding that the show was not just another sitcom, but a political powder keg disguised as comedy. Its scripts tackled topics most shows avoided: racism, class, gender roles, and the Vietnam War, all centered around Archie Bunker, a caricature of American ignorance that hit uncomfortably close to reality for many. When Carol O'Connor arrived at rehearsal, Sally immediately noticed a shift in the air. He had a calm intensity, not loud or theatrical, but unshakable. He treated the script like scripture, dissecting each line, questioning every beat, and insisting that even jokes serve a purpose. He was there to make people think, not just laugh, and he expected everyone else to carry their weight. Sally quickly realized nothing about this job would be casual. Each line had to land precisely, each scene carried social tension, and she felt constant pressure to meet his exacting standards. In those first days, she was terrified of slipping up or disappointing him. She stayed late after rehearsals, obsessively reading scripts and rehearsing scenes in private, too scared to ask questions. She later described the experience as a baptism by fire, with the pressure unrelenting and every glance from Carol measuring her value not as a person, but as a performer. Their dynamic was set early. He was the anchor, the authority. She was the newcomer trying not to sink. Though he never spoke harshly during that first month, his silence often conveyed more than words. As filming progressed, a strange bond began to form. Carol's stern demeanor occasionally gave way to glimpses of warmth, revealing that he saw potential in Sally beyond that of a young co-star. Behind the scenes, Carol had a reputation for being thoughtful, well-read, and deeply committed to his craft. He believed in storytelling as a tool to push boundaries and held everyone to a level of seriousness and purpose. To Sally, it felt like mentorship with a catch. He guided through challenge, critique, and high expectations, never belittling but demanding constant excellence. One incident early on underscored this. During a serious rehearsal, Sally laughed at a line and Carol paused, asking simply, "Do you understand what this line means?" That single question carried more weight than any outburst, making her realize she was being tested not for ego, but for the integrity of the message. Carol demanded realism and fearlessness from the show, leaving no room for vanity or softness. Sally described feeling as though she had disappointed a parent, and in many ways Carol became a father figure, protective, proud, but always demanding, with warmth tempered by sharpness. She followed these unspoken rules for a long time, but the growing intensity of the show eventually tested her limits. By the mid-1970s, All in the Family was unavoidable, reflecting the nation's divisions and tensions. While Archie Bunker was fictional, the debates he sparked were real. Off-camera, Sally and Carol were very different. She was young, progressive, and deeply engaged with the cultural movements of the time, while her identity as Gloria, the feminist, the idealist, was more than acting. It was personal. If you want, I can also continue rewriting the rest of your text in this same flowing narrative style so it reads as a seamless story. Do you want me to do that? On the other hand, Carol was older and more rooted in tradition. While he was nothing like the bigoted character he played, he had strong opinions about what worked in a script and what did not. He was passionate about storytelling, but he was also fiercely protective of the show's tone. He disliked anything that felt preachy, sentimental, or too obvious. That difference in approach caused friction. One episode focused on women's rights and gender roles, a subject Sally felt strongly about. She wanted the message clear, forceful, and unapologetic, but Carol thought the dialogue was heavy-handed and believed the scene's power lay in subtlety. He argued that Archie's ignorance should speak for itself, while Sally wanted the audience to understand Gloria's stance immediately. The disagreement was quiet, no shouting, but the silence afterward spoke volumes. In interviews, Sally later said she never feared Carol's temper, only his disapproval. When he disagreed, it felt like a door had closed, making her question herself, her instincts, and even her place on the show. Yet there was also respect embedded in those clashes. Neither backed down or softened their beliefs to avoid conflict. And over time, that stubbornness created a rare relationship in Hollywood, one built on friction rather than flattery. Still, the early clashes left a mark on Sally, reminding her that Gloria might be Archie's daughter on screen, but behind the scenes, their worlds did not always align. Soon, one confrontation would change everything. Sally had spent years playing the respectful newcomer, learning, absorbing, and keeping her head down. She was grateful for the opportunity and understood how groundbreaking All in the Family was. Yet beneath the surface, quiet tension was growing. Despite her admiration, a voice inside her questioned whether her creative instincts mattered, and that voice would not stay quiet forever. The turning point came during the filming of an emotional scene, one that addressed a heavy theme and had already provoked strong reactions from the cast. The script had been rewritten several times, and when rehearsal arrived, Sally felt it had lost conviction. Gloria's lines sounded watered down, reducing her character to polite frustration instead of meaningful resistance. Sally saw it as a step backward, for Gloria and for the show's mission. She wrestled with it overnight, unsure whether to speak up. Challenging a script was risky, especially with Carol in the room. He was the star and the heartbeat of the show, respected by everyone, and his creative influence was unmatched. Yet she could not stay silent. The next day, before rehearsal, she approached him and the producers, script in hand, pointing to the line she believed needed changing. Quietly but firmly, she said, "I do not think Gloria would say this." The room went silent. Carol did not raise his voice or dismiss her. He simply asked what she would say instead. Sally explained her vision, a sharper, emotionally honest version that reflected the Gloria she had worked to bring to life. There was no drama, no defensiveness, only conviction. To everyone's surprise, Carol nodded. That works. That moment changed everything. Sally realized that Carol's respect was earned, not given to those who simply agreed with him. He valued truth and standing your ground. From that day forward, she no longer felt like she was walking on eggshells. Their conversations became more direct, their debates more open, and their working relationship stronger for it. They still did not always agree, but the fear that had hovered over her since day one finally began to dissolve. Even with that progress, there was one thing she kept locked inside, something she could not bring herself to say for many years. Archie Bunker was never meant to be a hero. He was written as a satirical figure, a man whose views were outdated, prejudiced, and often absurd. He represented a generation clinging to a fading worldview, a caricature of American ignorance wrapped in sarcasm. But somewhere along the way, the audience stopped laughing at him and started laughing with him. To Sally, that shift was deeply unsettling. She had joined All in the Family, believing it was a smart, fearless show that used comedy as a weapon. And it was. But she had not anticipated how easily that weapon could be misinterpreted. Viewers would stop her on the street, quoting Archie's most inflammatory lines, meant to be offensive, and laugh as if they were clever punchlines. They were not outraged, they were entertained. At first, she tried to brush it off. Satire was tricky, and not everyone would get the nuance. But over time, the praise for Archie only grew louder. Some fans saw him as a misunderstood truth-teller. Others idolized his bluntness. Slowly, a troubling truth settled in for Sally. The joke was flying over too many heads. In later interviews, she admitted this kept her awake at night. She feared the audience was missing the point. Archie was not supposed to be right. He was supposed to make people uncomfortable. Gloria, her character, was the moral counterweight, standing for feminism, compassion, and progress. But when those values were met with laughter or dismissed as nagging by the audience, Sally felt the show's message slipping through their fingers. Scenes that felt empowering on the page could feel deflating in front of a live audience. Some episodes left her drained, not because acting was difficult, but because the crowd's reaction felt wrong. She poured real emotion into Gloria, fighting for her lines, giving her depth, and representing the kind of daughter who could lovingly challenge her father's toxic beliefs. When those moments were met with chuckles rather than thought, it stung, blurring the line between fiction and reality. Carroll O'Connor was nothing like Archie Bunker in real life, but his performance was so convincing, so immersive, that even his co-stars occasionally felt caught in the character's gravitational pull. Sally found herself reacting to Archie as if he were real, as if she were truly arguing with someone whose values terrified her. She stayed professional on set, never breaking down, but went home after certain tapings emotionally spent, wrestling with the idea that her work might not have the impact she hoped for. Those doubts were never spoken aloud during the show's run. She buried them, focused on the work, and tried to believe the message would reach the right people. The truth, however, she never fully made peace with, not until much later, when she could separate the noise from what mattered most. When Carroll O'Connor passed away in 2001, the world remembered him as a television giant. Tributes poured in from actors, critics, and fans who had grown up with All in the Family. News outlets focused on his legacy, his bold portrayal of Archie Bunker, and how he helped change the conversation around television and social issues. But for Sally, the loss struck a different chord. She had lost more than a co-star. She had lost a mentor, a challenge, and a complicated presence that had shaped her in ways she had never fully admitted. For years, she said nothing publicly about what their relationship had truly been like. She kept her memories private, sharing only the usual stories at interviews and reunion specials. There were moments she could have spoken out, times people asked about Carroll directly, but she always kept her answers respectful, warm, and guarded. It was not until much later in life, well into her 70s, that she finally revealed the truth. The story. Sally Stars's reflections remind us that behind every iconic show, every memorable character, and every laugh, there are human relationships, struggles, and growth that often go unseen. Her journey with Carroll O'Connor was not about scandal or sensationalism. It was about respect, challenge, and the quiet shaping of talent through friction and mentorship. By finally speaking her truth, she honored both the work they did together and the lessons she carried forward. The legacy of All in the Family is often measured in its cultural impact, its bold comedy and its social commentary, but Sally's story reveals another layer, the personal, human side of creating art under pressure. It shows how admiration and fear can coexist, how creative tension can be transformative, and how the courage to voice one's convictions, even in small ways, can leave a lasting impression. In the end, what makes the show, and her memories of it, truly unforgettable is not just Archie Bunker's humor or Gloria's moral compass, but the real unspoken dynamics between the actors, the mentorship that shaped a young performer, and the honesty Sally eventually found the courage to share. It's a legacy of growth, respect, and the delicate art of being heard, even when the world is laughing.